Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and you listeners already know how much I love one of our founding principles of a rising tide lifts all boats. And I am absolutely convinced that we found our counterpart in that motto in her own industry when it comes to interior design. It's not often that I say an interior designer really exhibits that trait of a rising tide lifting all boats, but that's what today's guest is all about. So I'm so excited to introduce you to Rachel Jackson. Rachel is an Austin-based interior designer specializing in wellness-centered, sensory-friendly spaces. While she works with a wide range of clients, her expertise lies in designing for neurodiverse households, creating environments that support emotional regulation, comfort, and everyday ease. Her mission is to make supportive, neuro-inclusive interior design more accessible through hands-on client work, educational guides, and professional training programs for fellow designers and professionals in the medical and education communities who frequently work to support neurodivergent people. And why does all of this matter to Rachel? Well, because at the heart of it all is her signature approach that when we design for everyone, everyone wins. I'm so excited to get into the mind of not only a brilliant interior designer, but also, of course, one of us, a very brilliant entrepreneur herself. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Rachel Jackson. All right, Rachel, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. I'm so excited to be here.
Heck yes. Obviously, you and I very much have the rising tide lifts all boats philosophy in common. So I'm excited to kick things off with you, taking us beyond the bio, telling us who's Rachel, how did you start doing all these cool things?
Thanks. Yeah, it is seriously so exciting whenever I see anybody in any field that kind of has that mindset as well, because it really is the way that I work. And yeah, it's just exciting. So a little bit about how I started. I have always been intrigued and interested. I felt the way that my environment affected me growing up and was excited to get into interior design, probably subconsciously for that reason, but was just, interested in it. And it was when my son was probably 5, once he started school, really realized that he had some just sensory preferences, we'll just say. And so because I had the experience with addressing environments as an interior designer, I was able to kind of use those to help him, and realized through the years, different clients had said to me, hey, you're kind of doing this for us too. You're, the way that we feel when we have had you come in to address a space. One woman, it was 2 years ago when I really started kind of heading into this niche. She said, my husband and I have less arguments now that you've done some work in his office and in our living room. And I was just like, jaw drop, like, what do you even mean? How does that happen? And she said, now that he's a little more organized, now that he can keep his things in his space, I'm nagging at him less. We're getting into arguments less. And so when I heard that, I was like, I think we need to look into how we can really maximize this for a wider range of clients, of people. Yeah, so here we are.
Yeah, I love that story. Rachel, I always love a good story, and starting it off there is so relevant to what we talk about in the world of entrepreneurship. How frequently do we say we don't sell the benefits, or we don't sell the features, we sell the benefits of what we do? And in marketing and sales, it's a cliche. I don't necessarily love this cliche, but it's true, is that nobody wants a drill, they want a 1/4-inch hole in the wall. And here we are talking about you as an interior designer. Of course, you provide interior design services, but who knew that you also provide marriage benefits and parenting benefits. Yeah, it's so cool. Talk to us about that approach, because I think that there's so many powers to what you do that when you meet clients, potential clients, when you just talk to people even at scale, I would imagine that everybody has their own goals. You must be good, Rachel, just doing the incredible work that I've seen that you do at figuring out what matters to people. How do you navigate there in the conversations you have with them?
Well, so as someone who has ADHD, people have said like, oh my gosh, you're so organized. I'm only organized because like I have to be, because my brain is not naturally geared toward that. So as a result, I have created processes and questionnaires. So one thing that I do in my client onboarding process is I really take a deep dive into like, yes, what is the end goal? What's your 1/4 inch hole in the wall that you want? And follow a process that helps me navigate, helps me see what's important to you, so that we can get there. I'm very much a roadmap person, which is one reason why I have a lot of free resources on my website, because there's people that also benefit and think in that roadmap kind of way. And so I think that in interior design, it can be seen as an inaccessible luxury service, and it is in many ways. There's definitely that into it, but for people who need help, I want that to be there too. And so some of these roadmaps I have on my website, you can download them. And really it's just kind of questionnaires. It's how I go through my process. And the cool thing is when I'm meeting with someone who does have some sensory challenges, I do too. And so I can kind of get in their brain, even if my sensory challenges may not be theirs. I'm able to ask questions to help assess what theirs are. And yeah, just kind of dive in like that.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear about the nature of the work that you do. You went straight to your onboarding process, which obviously allows you to start getting into their minds. But one thing that I always find difficult, Rachel, is when I work with creatives such as yourself. We've got some really talented graphic designers behind the scenes across my different businesses. And Rachel, sometimes I feel like I don't want to limit their powers and I don't want to limit what they do because they know better than I do. And I would imagine that a lot of your clients, when they work with you, especially seeing the beautiful spaces that you've designed, is they probably think, I don't even know what to share with you, Rachel. Am I supposed to have the answers? Am I supposed to tell you what's in my mind and you make sense of it? How the heck does that side of your creative brain work in the way you interact with your clients?
Yes. So I would say one example would be when we're trying to figure out what is someone's design style. Even for me, if I go to the store and I'm looking, for a specific thing for my house, if I don't have kind of a clear North Star of like what my end goal is, who knows what I'm going to bring home? And I'm an interior designer. So with clients, it's especially important that we have that end goal in mind kind of at the outset. And it's going to save clients a lot of time and money, whether that's through saving them design time and revision time, or it's, hey, we ended up buying the wrong thing. This coffee table doesn't work, blah, blah, and they have to, repurchase. So one thing that I've learned is at the outset, I'll use my design style and color palette guide, for instance. So this is something that is free on my website. It's the process that I used for clients and decided to just, give that out to as many people as want it. They really can take a deep dive, and it can get overwhelming trying to figure out to figure out and to commit to like, oh, this is going to be my look. Do I want that? Anyway, okay, so the process I have for that is essentially you head to Pinterest or Houzz, wherever you tend to find your inspiration, and click on as many pictures as you can. Fill like a whole board. And what's really cool is And sometimes clients can't end up seeing this for themselves, but it's been really interesting. The clients that can, more of them can than not. But you view that board at full screen, and you're going to start seeing patterns of color, patterns of style, and that really helps kind of weed down, your North Star, your roadmap. And so from there, the hard part is kind of selecting 2 or 3, 4 pictures that really kind of get their style, get the look they're going for. And we can use those for the project. And one thing that this does too is for those people who wouldn't even classify themselves as needing some kind of sensory considerations, we are all drawn to things that make us feel good. And so what's really cool is, aside from trends, aside from, kind of what you may have pigeonholed yourself into design-wise, when you take a look at those inspiration images on such a massive scale, and you're just able to kind of see it all at once, you're able to narrow down and hone in projects.
Yeah, it's so cool hearing the way you articulate that, Rachel, especially because I want to really echo something that you said there, because the older I get, the wiser I get, the more I'm convinced that this is the very essence of the human experience and what it means to a mass experience, and that is recognizing patterns. And it's so interesting to me the way you articulated that, which is pin a bunch of things, which probably feels erratic in the moment when people are doing it. But then when you zoom out, you go, holy cow, the entire thing is blue. Like, I didn't know when you just asked me what colors am I into. It's hard to say that, especially as a guy. I'll call myself out there, but yeah, just have me pick a bunch of things, zoom out, and the patterns probably have a tendency of revealing themselves. With that said, I'm going to put you on the spot here for a second to talk about patterns, because you've worked on so many different projects, and I love the mission that you've carved out, which in turn has probably defined your niche of wellness-centered, sensory-friendly spaces, especially supporting the neuro-inclusive interior spaces that you're working on. You've probably seen some patterns and trends there that make you realize, wow, this is one way to calm our nervous system. This is one way to make sense in a chaotic world. What are some of those things that you don't think enough people tap into?
Okay, so I would say top 1. It is one of the easiest, quickest, cheapest ways that you can make a difference in how your body perceives itself in a space. Lighting, especially in the evening. So we know that, and this is getting a little bit technical, but any lighting with a temperature of 4,000 kelvins and up impacts our melatonin production. So one thing that's very important in spaces that we stay in the evenings, especially, is warmer lighting. So that Kelvin scale, 4,000 and up, gets you toward like more daylight light, that kind of blue, picture warehouses, hospitals, offices, kind of that like bright daylight. And then toward the lower end of that scale, think like the Edison bulbs, the kind of that orange, yellow light. So that's the other extreme. Somewhere kind of a third of the way over, ideally at around 2,700 kelvins. Again, I know this is a deep dive. 2,700 kelvins is the ideal hang out light temperature, and ideally not overhead lights, like lamps. You see how many lamps I have in my tiny living room? Like there's even whenever, we're here, it's lamps. So I think that's one of the biggest things people can do for their nervous systems, especially in the evening, is warm lamplight, to just kind of settle and soothe and lead to bed too.
Yes. Go ahead. Add another one, Rachel.
I'm going to say one thing. No. Just going to say one thing. So you think those kelvins could be a little bit tricky to find. It's on every light bulb box at Home Depot, anywhere. It looks like a nutrition label, and it has the Kelvin range on there. So it's easier to find than you think, but yeah.
Rachel, having recently shopped for light bulbs, the fact that you called it a nutrition label, totally accurate, because I found myself standing there looking at the ingredients, and a guy walked past and was just like, what are you it's a light bulb, dude. But no, it's not. Not all light bulbs are created equally.
Totally agree with you there.
I love how you call that out. Really hearing your approach to this, it takes me back. In episode 1038, we had Frank Nas on, who's an incredibly talented product designer. And Frank introduced us. He designs Post-it notes for the blind community. And in that process, what he realized was he informed me about curb cuts and the curb cut theory, which I never had heard about this, Rachel, which is, at the end of every sidewalk, the curb is cut so that if we are in a wheelchair, we can roll up onto the sidewalk. And what he taught me about the curb cut theory is that it benefits everybody. When my grandmother lived until 102 in New York City, and she walked 5 miles a day up until the very end, and those curb cuts made her life easier. Well, guess what? They also make my life easier because I bike a lot, and it's so much easier to get out of the traffic when I need to and just ride up that curb cut. And Frank really explained that when we design for everybody, everybody wins. And I'm so excited to see that slogan is really your North Star and your principle. Talk to us about that, because it's not always easy to make those considerations in our spaces, in the way we think, in the way we operate.
Yeah, you're so right with that. And sometimes I can get so overwhelmed with the amount of more there is to do, even then I feel like, I take it a little bit, but there's so much more that we could do in considerations. And what I'm loving to see, there's a company that I've used, for years. It's a carpet company, flooring company called Milliken Flooring. And they are based out of Europe. I can't remember which country, but they have done an incredible job. We could go right now and Google Milliken sensory friendly, neurodiverse friendly floor plan. And what they've done as a company is they've really done a great job with quiet spaces in their company layouts. So it's not just a sea of cubicles and that's all you get. There's these quiet spaces, there's these individual pockets, there's these, more like a library space where you can be quiet together space. So they've done what a lot of schools have done, which schools, because they are working with children, they've realized a lot of these principles for years. And Universal Design and Learning has done a great job at making, giving schools the tools they need to also create these quiet spaces together, or quiet spaces alone, or action spaces for kids needing that kind of sensory input. And so all I'm doing is trying to take the things that we're learning in a corporate or an educational level and bringing that home, which is especially helpful for anyone who's going through, whether it's you're working with an ADHD coach, whether you're working with your therapist, whether you're working with an occupational therapist. What did those things that benefit you in those environments, how can you bring that home to benefit you here? I think, again, there's so many considerations to make. And so I'm just really glad we can at least do the little bit that we're doing. And I'm just excited to be part of it.
Yeah, I want to ask you about a difficult question, of course, about balance, because Rachel, when you're designing spaces, you're not designing for one person, you're designing for families. You're designing for so many different wants and needs. Someone who is sensory seeking, I think about pretty much every kid that I've met at one point in their development is they just want to see and touch all the things and they want to look at all the colors and everything. Whereas some obviously are sensory avoiding, that there's different considerations for all of them. The thing about families is that they live under one roof, Rachel. How the heck do you even begin to balance that?
Yeah, and that is why, to answer your question initially, I am just part of the team that some families need to bring in, right? One thing that I can do when it comes to at least providing the space, I can't prevent all friction between people who live together, obviously. But what I can do is create spaces and create those kind of support the routines where you may have a big family who lives in a smaller space. And while that kind of sensory space is limited. So for instance, I grew up large family, shared a room most of my life. I had more of a sensory time that I found. I didn't realize I was doing this until I started this work. And I was like, oh, that's what I was doing years ago. But what I would do in my very large household that was, going crazy from 6 a.m. to 10, 11 o'clock at night, all day, every day, was after everybody went to bed, I would pop a bowl of popcorn. I had my favorite cherry soda I loved. I would create like this little routine, in the cocoon of a routine while everyone was asleep, or at least in their rooms, and it was quiet finally. And I'd put on my headphones and I would turn on my favorite audio book, on DVD or CD that I had rented from the library. And I would immerse myself in like quiet and in a certain space. So my point with that story is we can't always find certain spaces, but we may have to carve out times that we can kind of get what we need. Now, I was a sensory seeking child for sure, but even as a sensory seeker, I needed that downtime. Now, what do you do when you're a primarily sensory avoider? So that was my son, which was a very interesting. I think a lot of times parents end up having a kid that's like a bit of their opposite. And what was really cool about seeing him, and it's interesting because my husband is more on that side, so he was able to tell me like, here's what Jackson needs in these ways. And so for him, you can see behind me, maximalists tend to be, it's kind of a sign of like, oh, you're a sensory seeker primarily. You like some sensory input. Jackson, being an avoider, really needed his room so that he could go retreat into his little cocoon and just decompress from the day, from school, just kind of hanging out with friends. And so, yeah, there's several strategies that you can use, but if you're building a home, it's a little bit easier. Just try to make sure that like the quiet parts of the house, whether it's, bedrooms, offices, are as far away from kitchens and playrooms as possible. But yeah, when you're working with a house that's already built and for a family that's already living in it, it can be tricky. And so you just have to create some of those strategies on the fly.
Yeah, Rachel, it's really fun hearing you talk about these things because obviously we all see the world through our own lenses. And for me, so many of my lenses have to do with business, with entrepreneurship, because for me, it's been the most transformative experiences of my life. I've been an entrepreneur for literally half my life at this point. For 18 years, I've been running my own business. And so all of these themes that you're bringing up are things that we have to figure out within ourselves. So much of what you're talking about, I keep just hearing awareness, is I'm just like, well, Rachel, you can't serve your clients until you're aware of them, and you create a space and an environment for them to be self-aware and share some of that stuff with you. And then when I really keep going down the business rabbit hole, which is, it's always fun to have these conversations on the air with guests, one thing I really respect and admire so much about your business and the way that you do your business is how much you've stepped into your mission and your belief systems. And in business terms, we'd call it your niche. It's something that struck me on your website, which your website is beautiful, of course, which is exactly what I expect from the work that you do, Rachel. But right there in the headline, the headline says, Rachel Jackson Design specializes in ADHD friendly and neuro-inclusive spaces, offering expert guidance tools, so forth and so on. A lot of people, Rachel, want to have all of their messaging speak to everybody. And that's why I love the Seth Godin quote. It's so simple of, if everyone is your customer, then no one is your customer. It's so clear to me that you step into this stuff knowing full well, which it's easier said than done, that that's going to find the right clients for you, the right opportunities for you, which is scary to a lot of entrepreneurs who think it will actually do the opposite and close doors.
Sure.
Talk to us about that niche and the messaging and the mission that fuels the way you show up in the world.
Yeah, I would say for me, and initially, of course, it was like, oh no, am I limiting who I'm going to be able to reach? But I do believe that the people that I saw, the clients that I saw, the impact that my work had on them, and then I took a step back and saw how my work had impacted my own family through the years, and just kind of, I hadn't realized that, and so I knew that the people who this message resonated with were going to be, I was just grateful that I was going to be able to do something that worked for them, because traditional design, and I would even say traditional organization. So I'm not a professional organizer, but I have taken some courses. I've learned how to really kind of get into the chronic disorganization that is common with neurodivergent people like myself, and realized how, like on my side of things with interior design, with neurodivergent people, typical organization techniques don't always work either. And so being able to create something for a client base that I wouldn't say was neglected, they didn't have the same, I guess, impact, or feel the same impact from traditional design organization services. So that just made me so excited to be able to offer something that really, truly worked for someone, and that would make just a massive impact to the quality of their life day to day. Like, that just makes me so happy to be able to do and be a part of. Like I said, I'm definitely not doing this on my own. Like, there's a team effort, a team mindset behind it. And I bring in organizers all the time and bring a lot of that mindset into even my own work, because I would say that's the foundation of a lot of us. Is a designer can go in and make something beautiful, obviously, magazine covers, gorgeous. But if the storage isn't there, if you haven't addressed your clutter beforehand, like, there's so many levels to making a interior design both beautiful and functional, truly functional. So it's a long-winded way, I guess, of answering your question, but I'm just really excited that there's a group of people that I can really make an impact for, because I understand how to do it.
Yeah, so well said, Rachel. It really reminds me, I love talking to people who are in industries that are truly of service to humanity in so many different ways. A lot of healthcare administration people, when I talk to them, they don't use the term, we use so many different terms societally, and you clearly were so careful about that term neglected. They use the term underserved, and I've always really liked that term, because it makes me ask the question of who is underserved. It's easy to serve audiences that are mainstream, that are in front of our faces every day. It's those underserved communities that we can make so much of a difference to. And that's cool, because there's probably a billion of those communities. We could probably find them in every single corner of the world. So I love the way you talk about this stuff, Rachel. I'm going to ask you to keep that entrepreneurial minded hat on, because I love asking this question at the end of every episode, because you are one of us. You are a fellow entrepreneur. And that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and who inevitably have taken a lot of insights and valuable takeaways from the things you've shared with us already today. But you got to top all that for us here at the end of this episode, Rachel. What's that one piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
I would say, now, are we talking professionally, or are we talking, am I giving like home design?
Hey, we'll take one of each from you.
Okay. Okay. I would say professionally, find your community. Talking about a rising tide lifting all boats. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the amazing women that I met in my industry. Not my industry. They were just other entrepreneurs here in Austin. And we get together, we talk shop, we are brainstorming constantly. It's encouraging, and it's incredible. And I mean, my niche came out of a business retreat with those women. And so this is all sprung out of that. So professionally, find a community, and it's collaboration, not competition at the end of the day. Okay, so design-wise though, I love this tip. And I have a quick video on YouTube right now that it's like 2 minutes, and it kind of says how I do this in my house. But take like your spot that really makes you kind of go nuts. Mine was a little spot over at my chair where I hang out at night. God, we get so cluttered. And I don't know if you can see it, but no, there we are. That little basket that you can kind of see peeking out underneath the oh my gosh, my finger, underneath the side table. Okay, that basket has a charging station. It has tons of ugly cords. It has a heating pad. It has my nail kit. It has the dog brush, stuff that doesn't normally go together. But its common denominator was it's the stuff that I needed and used while sitting in that chair. Oh gosh, over there. Okay, that chair. And so to eliminate friction, I don't now have to go across the house to put things away because they are being stored where they belong. I just store them where I need them. So really take a look at items that you keep having to put away all the time and be like, what if I just stored them where I use them, where I need them? And in the video I referred to on YouTube, it's got my purses, my hats are no longer stored upstairs in my closet because inevitably as I was leaving to go out the door, I needed them at the door. And so either I just would go without a hat, go with a purse that didn't match, or I would run upstairs and be late. Anyway, so that's my big thing for eliminating friction, especially for our ADHD brains at home.
Yes, I love that advice, Rachel. Gosh, you know what? That second piece of advice might feel like design advice. I feel like that's a metaphor for life. I think that there's so many life lessons inside of all of that. And then Rachel, just being on video, being on air together shows you how difficult, whether meteorologists have it on TV, pointing in opposite directions, not an easy task. So well done. Seriously, people never fully understand how difficult that task is. So I love seeing you navigate that in real time. Well, Rachel, you've been such a wealth of knowledge and insights from the very beginning to the absolute end. I'm also very excited for listeners to check out your work because I always say success leaves clues. Scrolling through your website, what people are really going to see, especially after hearing you on the air with us today, is that there's so much consistency because, of course, you've stepped into your true self. You understand your messaging. You understand who it is that you serve and how you serve them. So I'm very excited for listeners to check out your website. You've teased your YouTube channel, so drop all the links on us, Rachel. Where should listeners go from here?
I will do it. So, I said I had a lot of free resources. Go on there, grab them, text me, call me, email me, whatever. If you need more, I can direct you because I think I have some things that aren't even linked on my website right now. Anyway, I'm here for you. If a lot of this feels very like DIY and you're just like, I don't want to do this by myself, we can set up a 15-minute free call. That calendar is on my website and will be linked below. And I also have a sensory-friendly home assessment. That is one of my favorite things to do. So we will go through a 90-minute Zoom session where I'm going to audit a lot of your things like lighting, sound, texture, a lot of the things like that. And then we will have a hour after you start to implement some of the recommendations I'm going to give you. And you'll have another hour of follow-up questions like, hey, how do we do this? Blah, 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 that kind of thing. And then you'll also get access to, one is ready for download right now. It's a interior design for sensory friendly homes course. And then I'm writing the second one. That's part one. I'm writing part two right now. So all of that would be included with a sensory-friendly home assessment, which again, it's a super fun time to do together. And yeah, head to my website, racheljacksondesign.com, and you can find me on Instagram at Rachel Jackson Design. And then I've got workshop archives over on my YouTube channel, again, at Rachel Jackson Design. I like to try to keep it a little simple.
Awesome. And we like to make it even simpler for our listeners. So all of those notes or all of those links are down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. So Rachel, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Brian. This is great.